Happy Cinco de Mayo, Jags fans. Welcome in to this episode of Jags Now, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. I'm your host, Cullen Brown, and on today's show, we're going to be discussing ESPN's Jeremy Fowler released an article detailing draft intel that he heard from all 32 NFL teams surrounding the 2026 NFL Draft. Just overall, kind of behind the scenes thought processes and stuff that could have maybe happened. What were the thoughts behind some of the moves that were made? And for the Jaguars, he mostly spoke about second-round pick Nate Boerkircher. So wanted to kind of come in here, read what Fowler had to say to you guys, kind of give my thoughts and opinions, but also create this discussion with you guys in terms of my just general thoughts, but also hear from y'all on what y'all's thoughts are from what Fowler is reporting. But, guys, before we get into it, if you guys enjoy the content that we're producing here on the channel, it would be greatly appreciated if you guys gave us a like on today's episode. We're trying to get this content out to more Jags fans and trying to grow this community on YouTube. So if you want a free way to help support what we're doing here, please consider hitting that like button. All right, so I'm just going to kind of read what Fowler had to say in his article. There was also a quote from a veteran NFL player agent that I want to get to on the back half of today's show, but we'll read what Fowler had to say first, react, and then just kind of give my thoughts and reactions to it. So here's what Fowler had to say. The Jaguars made waves by selecting Texas A&M tight end Nate Boerkircher at number 56, igniting a tight end run earlier than expected. 4 tight ends went in the next 17 picks. Boerkircher was ESPN's number 13 ranked tight end. Was this a reach? Sort of, but perhaps not as much as perceived. Realistically, Boerkircher entered the draft thinking he would go late in day 2, early in day 3. So let's just say in the 3rd or 4th rounds. But he was notified in the process that multiple teams listed him as their top blocking tight end. Boerkircher believed Denver was high on him and considered him a viable option early in the 4th round. Either way, Boerkircher had no idea he was on Jacksonville's radar. In fact, Jacksonville brass spoke with Boerkircher's reps early in the draft week and asked about other players, not Boerkircher. So a couple of interesting angles to kind of react and just kind of make from Fowler's reporting there. First one is, again, kind of keeping up with the theme that Liam Cohen and James Gladstone have kept throughout the draft process was, hey, we're not meeting with any guys. You are who you are on tape. And clearly with Boerkircher, that was the case, right? Clearly by Fowler's reporting, Boerkircher had no idea the Jaguars were even considering him as a potential option during the 2026 NFL Draft. And I think that whether you like the strategy, whether you don't, it is consistent with what Cohen and Gladstone have kind of preached in terms of, hey, we're not going to cloud our judgment here. We know what we see on tape. We can look at the measurables if we need to or whatever behind-the-scenes information that's needed. But we're going to take guys who we think can fit our kind of plan, our vision, and Boerkircher certainly fit that mold. And I think Boerkircher, it's going to be an interesting fit, man. I've kind of gone back and forth with this pick in terms of how effective he can be in year 1 and beyond. I mean, he is a 25-year-old tight end who has been mainly a blocking tight end. Does he have potentially some chops as a receiving tight end, some plus to play alongside Brenton Strange? We'll ultimately see. He didn't have the best production in college, but I do certainly think that there's still room to grow for Boerkircher, and Liam Cohen clearly has a vision for him in this Jaguars offense alongside Brenton Strange, who feels like any moment they could potentially look to extend at any point in this offseason, which we will have you covered here, by the way, here on the channel. So make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications. But just kind of my general thoughts on Boerkircher, we'll discuss more in here in just a moment. But I want to ask you guys this before we get to our wonderful sponsor. How confident are you that Nate Boerkircher can succeed in Jacksonville? Scale it 0 to 100 for me. 0, you think there's no chance he can succeed. I'm already out on it. 100 means he's going to succeed. He's going to outlive his expectations. You guys let me know down in the comment section below. But guys, today's show would not be possible without our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the sponsor of today's show, and it's America's #1 sports picks app. The playoffs are here for basketball, baseball is underway, and it's time to cash in with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app and is the best place to win cash while watching sports. If you're a hoops guy, you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or 3-pointers. If you're more of a seam head, you can choose hits, home runs, or strikeouts. The app is really easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Speaking of Taco Tuesday, they've got a little Taco Tuesday deal in the hoops world. As Cade Cunningham. His points, I'm taking the more, 20.5. Make sure you're always checking the Prize Picks app because they can have deals for you like this at any given point. So I'm going to take the more on his points on a little bit of a discount there. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'll take the more on 28.5 points. That is a goblin pick, so it is lower payout, but it does increase the chances of potentially the lineup hitting at a lower point total there. It's $10 lineup to win $25. New user offer. Download the Prize Picks app today with the link in the comments and the description and use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, getting into more of what Fowler kind of had to say here and more of my general thoughts and reaction. I thought that one thing that was kind of noteworthy also was him saying, excuse me here, losing my voice a little bit. Jacksonville's brass spoke with Boerkircher's reps early in the draft week and asked about other players. Could one of those players have been Albert Regis, who they also selected out of Texas A&M on day 2, obviously in round 3, after Nate Boerkircher? Could very well be possible. I think Regis was also looked at as a potential Jaguars kind of, I guess, reach, if you want to call it, in day 3. I've given my thoughts and, ad nauseum about the Jaguars ignoring the consensus draft board and simply saying, hey, we're going to draft players that we think can contribute to our roster. Consensus board be damned, basically. And I think that while I do think it's going to be make or break for this regime, more specifically James Gladstone, they clearly are sticking to the script, right? They went out and made a very aggressive trade for Travis Hunter. And, I want to see what Travis Hunter looks like this season, how the Jaguars are ultimately going to deploy him. But that was a bold move, right? Like James Gladstone's made bold moves throughout his entire tenure, right? This draft class not included. He went out and traded for Jacoby Myers. He went out and made the swap Newsome for the Tyson Campbell trade. Like, he's made some aggressive moves this entire time as a GM. And I think that, during the draft, it doesn't shock me that he kind of went and said, look, we like this guy on our board. We're not sure he's going to make it into the 3rd round at pick 81 where we were picking next. Let's go grab him here at number 56. And based on the 4 tight ends that win the next 17 picks, I can't necessarily blame him. Thought it was noteworthy that Fowler mentioned Denver as a potential landing spot for Boerkircher in the potential 4th round. Would have been very interested to know some other teams that were interested in Nate Boerkircher, but Denver being one of those, I thought was kind of interesting. And this is the last quote that I want to get to before we get out of here. This is from a one veteran NFL player agent on just kind of Jacksonville and their kind of thought process. This is what this anonymous veteran NFL player agent had to say. For better or worse, Jacksonville is going to do this their way. They're going to pick the players they want. Perception be damned. Pretty much sums up, right? Like this kind of whole draft from Jacksonville's perspective. And if you go across, NFL.com or Mel Kiper or any draft analyst, right, that is in the national mainstream media, Jaguars are more than likely going to be at the bottom or near the bottom in terms of a lot of draft grades. And while I do think that going against the consensus has a large part of doing that, ultimately the Jaguars and James Gladstone, they have a vision, they have a plan, and it better kind of work, right? Because a lot of the perceived outside structure of this draft has just not been viewed well. And for a young GM and head coach, right? Yes, you're coming off the successful season that we've detailed, right? But you're still young enough in your kind of tenure to where if this next season goes sideways, which I'm not saying it will, and I don't think this draft class has the power to potentially kick the Jaguars into drafting top 10 next year. I don't think that's in the realm of possibility. But if you're sitting there and you regress, right, based on some of the needs that others perceive that you could have gone to, right, like maybe addressing the linebacker spot, maybe potentially going a different position other than blocking tight end with your 2nd round pick. To me, James Gladstone's going to have to answer those questions in terms of his thought process, and he's clearly sticking to his guns. Him and Cullen clearly wanted some more culture, some more toughness in that locker room, and they feel like they've added so throughout the NFL draft. So I'm kind of just basically at a point now where, yeah, look, you can have your opinions on it. Ultimately, we'll see how it plays out when it comes to the 2026 NFL season when we kick off here in September. But I don't think, criticism of this draft class, is going to go away anytime soon. So you guys let me know down in the comment section below what was your kind of reaction to Fowler's reporting here on the Nate Boerkircher pick, and just overall your thoughts on the Jaguars kind of draft vision, plans, whatever you want to call it, here on the channel. Again, make sure you guys subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed the content we're bringing you here on the channel. And until next time, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Jaguars.